Hi, guys. I think we're the finale of the day. Is that right?
I think so.
Ish. We're getting towards the end. Well, it's full room, so thank you, guys. This is such a great panel. And such a broad topic. I feel like we could go on for days. We have about 30 minutes, so we'll try to get through as much as possible. You guys should introduce yourselves because you go way back and sort of had a baton passing in your career to a Twitter. Jeff, maybe we'll start with you. You can sort of introduce yourself to everybody. And you also have some news today, which we should get to.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Great to be here. Great to see everyone. I'm Jeff Seibert. I'm the founder and CEO of Digits. This is my third company. Previously did a company in the document collaboration space, mobile space, sold that to Twitter. And today, we just launched Digits, actually. We've announced the first end-to-end accounting platform of the AI era.
There you go.
So you can think of it as a complete replacement to QuickBooks, invoicing, bill pay, accounting, and the big advantage is unlike all the manual bookkeeping accounting workflows you're probably used to, Digits automates 93% of it. All your bookkeeping's done for you. So it's been really, really exciting.
Yeah.
Does it use AI?
Extensively. 18 different models in production, orchestrated as a symphony to actually do the accounting workflows.
Does it use OpenAI?
We do, yes.
Okay.
So yeah, the way to think of it is we use GPT as sort of our base tier, and then we do a whole ton of predictive models, all in-house, custom trained on top, that really understand double entry accounting. And so that's how we can layer in all the expertise of deep accounting knowledge with the general knowledge of OpenAI.
Kevin, what's OpenAI? This tiny startup, most haven't heard of it. You're in stealth mode, I heard.
Yeah, it's good that we have a user here on stage. Otherwise, we would have had to kick him off.
So you've got a big role at OpenAI. Tell us kind of your day-to-day, and actually your career path, too, because you guys did cross over at Twitter, and then you were at Instagram. How'd you get to OpenAI?
We did, yeah. I had the good fortune of actually acquiring your company, Crashlytics, when we were at Twitter. So I was at Twitter for about 7 years, 09 to 16, originally as an engineer, and then eventually as head of product. And then went to Instagram as head of product. Was one of the co-creators of Libra, the cryptocurrency. Anybody remember Libra? Yeah, all right. And then was president at Planet, where we built satellites and imaged the whole world every day. So I've now been at OpenAI for about 9 months. It's been an absolute blast. I mean, the most incredible, intense, inspiring, fun, very little sleep company that I've ever worked for, but we're having a blast, and it's getting to come to places like this, talk to developers, hear all the different ways that people are using our platform is just awesome.
This is all about the human experience, too, so we'll talk about that. But while we're talking about sort of Silicon Valley in general, I'd love your take on how this current Gen AI cycle compares to other cycles you guys have lived through and other moments in tech. Jeff, when you think about the opportunity here, working in this space, what has this meant, and how does it feel different?
Yeah, it's so much fun to build companies riding these technology waves. And to me, this is back to almost the personal computer, even more so than mobile. Because mobile was a form factor. It did change how you use it. But a lot of the fundamental tech was similar, versus the personal computer introduced like whole new capabilities. And that's where we are today. What I love about AI is it is real tech. And you can go as deep as you want and really understand the magic and start thinking of how to apply it to real problems. And previous waves, I might call out crypto, I think we're lacking in some use cases. And this is just incredible how broadly you can apply it.
Yeah, I was telling someone earlier today, when we were at Twitter, you're at Instagram building products, you're starting with, you want to understand who you're building for, you want to understand the problems you're trying to solve. But then when you were at Twitter, Instagram, basically everything before this, at least in my career, the technology that you're building with is like kind of constant, right? I mean, a database is a database. It gets like a little bit better every year, but fundamentally, you kind of know what you're working with. Whereas in AI, it's just not true. I mean, every 2 months, there's some new model that can do something that computers have never been able to do before, and suddenly you kind of need to rethink your roadmap. The problems are the same. You can still solve really important problems, but the way you do it may be totally different from month to month. And that, for me, has made building products at OpenAI just totally different than building products anywhere else.
Let's talk about productivity, because that is a big part of the sort of work-life human experience. People are already getting more productive. But from a macro standpoint, I mean, how productive can one person get? Are we going to get to the point where you are working a couple hours a day? Give us a little bit of a flavor of how you think about this, and how much more productive can the U.S. workforce be?
Well, I don't know about you. I spend, I don't know, a couple hours a day doing random things that like I need to get done, but the act of doing those things provides me very little value. You know, I'm like filling out forms for my kids' soccer team, random stuff that you have to do at work. I would love to outsource that to an AI. And I actually don't think it's even just about making individuals more productive. There's all of that too, and that's really important. And the more you have this shift to agents, which I think is going to define 2025, right? Take ChatGPT. This is the year it goes from answering questions for you to doing things for you in the real world. You can just have it go off and do a bunch of work. Then it's not just how efficient can you make yourself. It's also how many agents can you have off like solving problems for you. But I will say, personally, I'm not of the opinion that we're all gonna like retire to a life of poetry and UBI and stuff like that. I think people strive. Like it's a very human thing to want to solve problems that are bigger than you and like strive and try and do hard things. So I don't think like people are still going to be people, and we're going to try and create awesome stuff for the rest of the world to use. We're just going to have superpowers as we do it.
Jeff, I would think accountants love this.
Yeah, I have very concrete data to share, actually. So the accountant world is desperate for this technology because CPA enrollment's down about a third over the past 8 years. The industry is facing this huge talent crisis. And if you look at how accounting works in America today, the typical outsourced accountant works with about 10 clients, so 10 small businesses, right? And they're spending hours every month doing the finances for these businesses. We have hard data now that with Digits, you can close a typical client's books in under an hour a month. And so imagine a world where now an external accountant is serving 100 clients a month instead of 10. It's literally an order of magnitude improvement.
Do we need fewer workers? We're in this new administration where immigration is a huge topic. The workforce is changing. I just wonder if you think going forward, the US might need fewer workers to be competitive at a global level.
I don't know. I think, again, it's human nature to want to create and to build something and to build great things for other people. I think the world is jobs are going to change, and that will happen over some period of time. But I think it's just going to be an opportunity for people to do more than they're doing today. Because I don't know, at least I couldn't imagine a world of like sitting around.
That's what Masa-san described like 10 years ago. It was something about like a banana, like sitting back and having grapes fed to you. It was like this, exactly what you're describing.
Yeah.
You think people still want to work.
So there's an there's an economic principle called the lump of labor fallacy. This came out in the late 1800s. People were terrified that electricity would eliminate jobs, right? Every single technical evolution has had this concern. Then it was automobiles, then it was computers, then it was the internet. And it turns out there is no lump of labor that you need fewer people to do. The type of work just changes, and people become more efficient and take on more work.
But doesn't this feel different? Like, I feel like this technology is just mind-blowing in some cases when you use it and it's basically thinking for you. It feels like it's just such a different comparison than electricity or cars.
Yeah, but isn't there, I mean, I don't remember the name of the thing where, you have a really busy freeway and you add 2 lanes.
Yeah.
And then all you have is a busier freeway because you make it easier to do something and like more people want to do it.
Yeah.
I think you're going to get a lot of that same effect. It's going to become easier and easier to do a bunch of the things in the world, and so they're going to become like more people are going to be able to do them, which is great. And then we're all going to like move on to work on higher leverage things, and like the world's going to be a better place.
It's interesting too. It feels like it's lowered the bar for engineers, for coders, or people to build a business that don't have the technical expertise. I would think that's probably another opportunity just in terms of creativity and building new companies. What are you guys seeing just in your ecosystem of some of the companies popping up around this that maybe couldn't have 5 or 10 years ago?
I mean, I am so excited for this because there can be so much custom software that it's been impossible to build, right? Like imagine you want an app to do X. And I think there will be a world where that all of a sudden starts to become possible, and you can have a really customized tool to do exactly what you want. I actually tried this a few days ago. I was like, I really wish there was an app for this. I have 3 hours. Can I make it happen? And the coding automation is not quite where it needs to be still. We have a ways to go. But I could imagine that happening. And so I think actually a proliferation of software, we've only seen the start of it. It's going to be crazy how much software there's going to be once you can make something very easily.
Yeah,
Maybe you should work on your prompting.
I was upset with its technical architecture, so maybe.
So I was actually talking to somebody maybe 6 months ago who was like a social worker of some sort, and they were talking about during COVID, when in the middle of like when none of us knew anything about what was actually going down, and we were all trying to get data, wastewater this, et cetera, and they had accumulated a bunch of data, but they had no ability to share it. They needed somebody to go build a basic website, but that wasn't their background, and it was COVID, so everything was crazy. And they basically they were like, I could have helped thousands of people in my local district if I'd been able to disseminate this data.
Wow.
And I just couldn't create a website for it. Mm-hmm. And those days are gone.
That was so recent, too. I mean, that was...
Right, that was... yeah,
sounds,
2020, 2021, like... Those days are gone now. You would just, you could do that in 30 minutes.
How does that change the startup ecosystem? I'm sure there's a lot of venture folks in the room. I would think, I don't know, if the bar is so much lower to start a company, how do you assess what's valuable?
So I think the big open question is, what is a defensive moat? Because you're right, if there's 100 companies that do X, it's going to be a tightly competitive space. There's not going to be a lot of economic value created for the investors in one of them. And so I do think, to touch on what you started with, AI is an incredible technology, but it is still just a technology, and I think there's a lot of founders right now who are getting lost in that and aren't realizing you still need to build the rest of the product. Mm-hmm. Like, it still needs to have a great workflow, it needs to have great security and user authentication and emails and notifications, and make sure you're solving the whole problem, and that problem is aided by AI, not that you're doing an AI thing and then you sort of forget about the rest of the product.
You brought up the M word, moat.
Yep.
How do you both think about your moat in this environment? Jeffy, we'll start with you, and then Kevin, it'd be interesting to hear as well about OpenAI.
Yeah, so this is what we've invested in. Building Digits took over 5 years. And it turns out it takes over 5 years to build an accounting ledger with all the features you need. No one is going to use a half-baked accounting product, right? There's just no world in which that's the case. And so we spent most of the time building out the accounting functionality. Like, we need to do full reporting and P&Ls and dashboards and components, and it needs to be secure, and you need to be able to share this data with your head of marketing, and they don't want to see payroll data. And all of that is still classical systems engineering. And then you do the AI and you automate a bunch of the workflows.
So you're not worried OpenAI is going to
No. The better models for us are brilliant, right? The core intelligence is going to get smarter and smarter. Our moat is we built accounting software.
What about OpenAI? DeepSeek is, what, a month? When did that happen? That was a month ago?
Like 25 years ago.
Yeah, right? In dog years. But, I mean, the moat for OpenAI, I feel like that's been a big question. How do you think about it?
So, it used to be the case that it would take us 6 to 9 months to iterate, on a half version of GPT. So you go GPT 3 to 3.5 to 4 to 4.5, and you'd be talking 6-9 months between these, because you're doing these massive pre-training runs and so on. And then we introduced this innovation in what I think September, October of last year, where in addition to scaling via pre-training, you can scale via reinforcement learning, and you can teach models to reason. And when you teach them to reason, you think like GPT-4, which doesn't reason. It's kind of system one thinking, right? You ask it a question, you get an answer. The models that reason, like O1, actually build hypotheses and use what they know to test the hypothesis and either refute it or validate it and then continue to build on top of it. Same thing if I asked you to do a crossword puzzle or a Sudoku, or you're doing scientific research, or you're just doing something like, booking a plane for yourself. You want to go from here to there. Well, this one goes through this town, but the timing isn't right. Maybe I should go. You're like building hypotheses, reasoning, backtracking. That's what these models can do. And now we have multiple ways to scale models, and this new form of scaling that we do with inference and test time compute, we're now iterating models like every 3 months. And so the model the speed at which the models are getting better is increasing rapidly. The cost of the models is coming down. The models are getting safer as we do it. So there's this incredible series of trends, and one of the ways that we manage, we want to stay ahead. Like, people talk about models being commoditized. My personal belief is that that's actually not true. Doesn't mean that we're going to have a lead forever. I think those days those days of like us having a 12-month lead are probably gone. but there's just like too many smart people, too much going on in the ecosystem. But I do think we have a 3 to 6 month lead, and having a 3 to 6 month lead is really valuable. And we intend to do everything we can to maintain that. And then at the same time, on top of the model, so we expose those models to our API. Who here uses the OpenAI API? Awesome. Who here uses ChatGPT? Love it. So we have 3 million developers using the API. We have over 400 million users using ChatGPT every week. We have over 2 million business users using our enterprise products. And so, that becomes its own moat. We have just like tons of people using the product, giving us feedback, and then we operate as fast as we can to continue iterating and improving all of those products for you all.
And launching products quicker, it feels like. It feels like every week.
That is the goal.
Yeah.
It is the fastest pace of anything that I have ever seen.
We spent the last 3 weeks doing formal benchmarking of our models, and literally 2 new models came out during that period, and we had to restart the benchmarks. So it's incredible, and that's what's so exciting about building in this era, is it's just moving in real time.
How do you think about the commodity question? Earmuffs, Kevin, but
So I'll disagree slightly. I think you probably will maintain a lead, but the delta will shrink, and for a lot of use cases, it will become relatively commoditized. And so for advanced use cases, yes, there'll be advantages, but for a lot of stuff, it won't matter as much. And so my personal advice to founders, to investors, is to architect such that you can swap out models very easily, because you want to be able to keep on top of the latest one, and if a new model comes out next week or tomorrow, swap that into your app.
And you're loving DeepSeek.
We try everything. We are very security conscious being in finance and accounting, so that's a big aspect for us.
How do you think about financial security? I would think with accountants, with any sort of sensitive financial data, that's probably core to what you're doing, is trying to protect that. How have you thought about it?
Yeah, and that's been one of the core aspects of our architecture, is the vast majority of our models are custom in-house trained. We do run open source LLMs internally. We need to be able to guarantee to our customers that we're not sending their financial data, particularly their raw financial data, out to any third-party provider. And so that's the sort of core of our platform. We do use some of the third-party providers for sort of surrounding stuff. But yeah, the stronger security story we can tell, by far the better it'll go in finance.
I want to get us back. We're going rogue. These are all great topics, but on sort of the human experience that we were talking about, we were chatting a little bit backstage about how kids use ChatGPT and how we use AI. Is this going to make us dumber and make our kids dumber? Because I feel like if you have all that information at your fingertips, I just wonder how it's going to change learning and how our kids, how are schools going to make sure that, okay, you actually have to learn how to read your textbook and memorize something and build those skills in a world where you can use voice mode and ask ChatGPT?
I don't know. I kind of look at all of this as leverage. I bet if you go back to, I don't know, my grandfather and my dad growing up, it was probably like, you guys use calculators? That's so crazy. Back in my day, we had to learn to multiply with a slide rule and that, And then when I was growing up and I'm getting to use the internet in school, my dad's probably like, come on, we had to write, we had to go to the library. You have this with every generation. And I think one of the accelerants for productivity, for society, is building layers of abstraction. And these models are incredibly powerful. Kids are going to grow up just knowing how to use them. My kids talk to ChatGPT like it's completely natural for them to talk to an AI.
Yeah.
And they're gonna learn faster. I mean, I hope that they grow up with a one-on-one personalized tutor, because every single study that looks at complementing in-classroom learning with a personalized tutor shows standard deviations of improvement when you get personalized tutoring. I actually am very optimistic the world's going to be a far better place. By the way, that's with my kids, who are very lucky to get to go to a good school near our house, et cetera. A lot of kids around the world don't get to go to school, don't have a great school.
Yeah.
And yet they have Android phones and they have a cell connection and ChatGPT is free. I'm super optimistic about the impact this is going to have in the world.
The access to information, and that's a great point, is completely different than it would have been even 10 years ago.
Yeah, I'm on the board of trustees of the high school I went to, and it is true that over the past year, basically all of the honor code violations have been because of ChatGPT. But the student body is evolving, and we actually asked the sort of head of the student head of school of what they're doing about it and how do you know when someone's cheating or not. And he was pretty funny. He was like, you know what your friends can write like, and you know when they didn't write that.
Is that offensive to you? Because you know you're not that smart. That was a really good
exactly.
paper.
So I was like, okay, don't worry. The students will be fine. They're adapting in real time. And it's definitely like the calculator. I completely agree. And so it'll evolve, and it'll become a natural part of the education.
And if people are interested in this topic, there's a book by a guy named Ethan Mollick, who is a really interesting follow on Twitter in general. He is a professor at Wharton, I believe, who does a lot of research around what pedagogy with AI should look like and so on. He wrote a book called Co-Intelligence. It's like a fast 100-page read. But it's a bunch of interesting, just discussion and study of what learning with AI could really be like, should really be like. I found it an awesome read. So Co-Intelligence, Ethan Mollick.
How do you think about it for your own kids? Are there limits similar to how you might think about social media that you would implement where you say, okay, that's actually, you can't use AI for this? And while we're talking about it, social media, you bring up books. I mean, I just read one of Jonathan Haidt's books, and with young kids, I mean, it makes you think totally differently about social media and what they have at their fingertips. How are you thinking about it for your kids?
We kind of go the everything in moderation route. I mean, our kids we have a 10-year-old and twin 8-year-olds, so they're not yet at the level of having phones. Mm-hmm. You know, one of them has a computer, but he doesn't get to use it anytime he wants. He gets certain times. So we just kind of go with moderation. We want to make sure they're playing outside and doing all the normal kid things. And we want to introduce them to AI and to computers. And, you know, he's used ChatGPT to program little games and stuff like that.
Yep.
So I think, like, you know, a little bit of everything is good.
Who here has seen The Social Dilemma? Netflix documentary? Actually,
yeah.
a ton of people. And so when Kevin and I were at Twitter, I don't think fully appreciated the downsides of social media and what was happening at the time. And after Twitter, I left and helped create this documentary where we did a ton of research and really understood what was going on and how damaging it can be. And I do think there's going to be unanticipated second-order effects from AI. Mm-hmm. That, like, the fact that you could have a personal tutor, brilliant. If that eliminates creative thinking, that could be bad, or critical thinking, right? That could be bad. And so I do think we want to be careful on watching the behaviors that emerge and ideally detect them sooner than what we saw with Facebook and having billions of users and a lot of negative consequences.
What did you learn from that, by the way? Like, thinking back to that experience and saying, oh, we missed it? I mean, what in your roles now would you do differently to prevent that?
So I very intentionally decided I would not work in consumer social again, and that was one of the reasons I was like, let's go build accounting software. Like, what is the furthest away from Twitter?
Kids will never use accounting software.
We can only do positive to society if we make the accounting faster.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, I think there's a lot of really hard to predict second order effects.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, though, to your last point, I think there are just natural sort of competitive effects that this is about kids using ChatGPT in school and stuff. That, so I was talking to a director who's built, made films that people would know, and we were talking about Sora, which is our video model. And people's natural inclination with a video model is like, oh, it's going to put all the creatives out of work, and like as if someone's going to snap their fingers and say, make me a blockbuster, and you're done. But that's not at all how it works. And what he was saying is he was thinking about this sci-fi film that he was going to make. And so, imagine you've got some scene and there's like a ship in outer space flying towards some Death Star-like thing. And then the next scene is the ship like flying around closer to the ground. And so you've got some cut scene between these two things. And his point was like, today or last year, what I would have done is I would have paid some special effects studio $100,000, and they would have taken a month, and they would have built me 2 different versions of this cutscene, and then it would have been a month, and I would have paid $100,000. So I would choose one of those 2 cutscenes, whether I really liked it or not. Whereas with Sora now, he can go and in the course of half a day test out 30 different cutscenes, and he can brainstorm with the model, and it will think of things that he doesn't, and then he can like riff on that. Oh, could you do that, but maybe make it a little more like this? and he'll have 30 different scenes to choose from. One of them he'll like way better, and then he'll still take that one, that idea to the creative firm and pay 50 grand for them to actually make the thing. But what results is a much better movie because he's had a brainstorm partner that's infinitely patient and thoughtful and all of that. And I think there's an analogy with writing and all sorts of other schoolwork for kids, because anybody that's just like, ChatGPT, write me an essay on whatever, you're not going to fool anybody.
Right.
Whereas like a kid that actually engages with ChatGPT and writes an essay and uses it as an interlocutor and says, well, what if I could, how would you tighten up this paragraph, and where do you think this is weak, and and really gets into it and uses it as like a co-editor, that kid could grow into an amazing writer. So like I think that, I think as we go forward, teachers are going to expect that. And so you're not going to get away with like, ChatGPT, write me an essay. You're going to need to learn to use these tools well, which is going to be, how we all work. That's how I write documents. I write them with ChatGPT today. So anyways, I think society has a way of figuring out these problems.
Well, and on a positive note, we still have a few minutes left, but on the safety discussion, I feel like that's something you hear in Silicon Valley too, just a lot of negativity and fear, honestly, around what the existential worst case scenario outcome could be. I was talking to someone who said he actually would not have kids because he's so worried about it. And it blew my mind, and it just, something like that, when we talk about how amazing this technology could be, is the other sort of dark side of this. How are you thinking about it? You're in such an important role in really protecting society. How do you think about it?
I guess one meta comment, and then I'll answer the question more directly. But if you go back, Mark Andreessen does a good job of cataloging these things. You can go back and find examples of, oh my God, bicycles. Nobody can go more than 30 miles an hour on a bicycle or your face will peel off. And then there's like when cars were invented and when TVs were invented and video games and every technology someone is like, the world's going to end. This is it. My generation was great, but too bad the next one's going to be a failure. And I just don't believe that. I'm very optimistic about human nature and our innate desire to do good things in the world and to use whatever technology we have to make the world a better place. So that's my general comment. And then specifically, Jeff was talking about at Twitter and other places. Every place I've ever worked has been full of good human beings who wanted to make the world a better place. And if you go back to Twitter in 2009, it was like Arab Spring and all of these amazing things where there were dissidents who were being silenced, and they were using Twitter to speak truth to power and all these amazing things. And I think we were pretty naive to the ways that same platform could be used, by the state to silence and things like that. We've learned a lot in the last 15 years. All of us, the tech industry, has learned a lot. I have never seen a company that invests as much in safety and integrity ahead of a launch than OpenAI. Before we launch anything, we're sending new models out to red teamers. We're engaging with policy folks, in addition to a whole host of internal work. So we're doing things that are well beyond anything I've seen at other companies, because we take it seriously. And by the way, we'll probably get some things wrong too, but we're trying to take this approach of iterative deployment and sort of co-evolving with society by launching early and often, and that's the best way we know how to do it.
There is one benefit to the cost to train models being so high, is if you compare it to social media, pretty much anyone could start a network, and of course most would fail, but some could get very popular very quickly before that company had any resources to invest in safety whatsoever, and that's not the case with model development. These are very well-funded companies, very experienced teams, and they're taking this seriously, which is a huge improvement over what we saw.
Well, we have a little bit of time left. Healthcare, that feels like the absolute bull case for AI, is curing disease, what you could do on that side. We'll end on a very positive note. What could that mean for humanity if we're able to cure diseases, and what are you seeing in your day-to-day? I know OpenAI does a bit in the healthcare space.
Yeah, I think that's about the most mission-aligned thing. Societies, especially advanced societies, one of the ways that you grow more quickly, that you advance society, is through research. It's technological development, scientific development, and I'm very excited for the world where AI starts to actually speed the pace of scientific progress. I think you're just starting to see it. I was telling someone earlier today, one of the interesting things is scientific advancement is often about finding intersections between fields, taking an analogy from one field and applying it in a new place. LLMs should be great at that, right? They know both fields very well. We're doing a lot of work with, for example, the national labs. We have a big deal with folks like Los Alamos and Lawrence Livermore, Sandia, where they're doing fundamental physics research. They're doing materials research. They're protecting the nuclear stockpile. Really important stuff. And you put we put our best models in the hands of these folks, and it speeds them, by a factor of 10 in some cases. It's really incredible to watch. So I think we're kind of at the boundary between where these models are going to start to be really valuable for fundamental science research. And I'm very excited for that future.
Jeff, any comments on that? If not,
No,
financial markets too,
agree.
I think. Yeah. Is that what you're here? You spent a lot of time sort of in Silicon Valley. I'm sure you know a lot about this, but the healthcare upside, but also financial markets, I would think there's probably some possibility for barriers to come down or things to get easier.
Yeah, for sure. Their just ability to process vast volumes of data and actually make sense of it and detect patterns from it is super, super powerful. And I think it's the general time-saving theme. You're speed-boosting research, you're speed-boosting analysis, you're speed-boosting insight. Together, that's just going to transform all of these industries.
And automating workflows, right? There's a lot of, if you look at the back end of any financial firm, there's a whole lot of people doing a whole lot of repetitive work. And those people are really smart and could probably be doing higher leverage work if you could automate a lot of what they do. So I think there's an opportunity to accelerate a lot of industries here.
We're over time, but bonus question, the best ChatGPT prompt. What have you come across that is the most useful in your day-to-day?
Oh, that's a good one. I like, there are these ones that kind of go viral on Twitter where people are saying things like, hey, ChatGPT, based on everything you know about me, draw me a picture of what you think my life looks like. Or based on everything you know about me, tell me something that I probably don't know about. Tell me something that's true, but that I probably don't know about myself. They're super fun, and especially if you ask with a model like 4.5, GPT 4.5, that's very good EQ, very sort of appreciative of nuance. You'll be surprised at how good the answer is.
What about you, Jeff?
I was actually going to give the same example. I'll say a very practical one. I do use it for sort of creative brainstorming to sort of set a base level. And so I asked it a few weeks ago, you're launching an AI invoicing tool. What are the best features? And it named a lot of our best features. And I was like, wow, this is super interesting. Maybe now we need to push the bar even further. And so it's using it to sort of negotiate product strategy. Really, really interesting.
Interesting. This is a fascinating discussion, guys. We could sit here all day, but I know we're over time, so we got to go. Thank you both. This was wonderful.
Thank you so much,
everyone. All right, guys.